The option analyzer is a tool that I love to use to help give me a daily bias, and I'm going to show you how we use it every day. It works on any time frame and any wave, but I like to use it most on the wave 1 daily. So what you're going to do is you're going to right click, tap option analyzer. There's a lot of different things you can use in here. This is where we chart the yellow box if you're on the correct time frame and wave, but what we're going to be going over today are these odds over here. So when we're above pivot, which we talked about in other videos, is this black line in the center. When we're above it, you're looking at this green bar chart over here. Below it, you're looking at this red bar chart. And what this is showing is the odds, or the amount of time we've made an H1, 2, 3, and so on above pivot, and L1, 2, 3 below pivot over the last X amount of days loaded. So for this example, we have 200 days loaded. Now what this is showing is whenever we're above pivot, 100% of the time we're going to have an H1. That makes sense. We can't be above pivot without making a high, right? But then following up that H1, we get an H2 about 63% of the time. This isn't something that would impact my daily bias that much. It's more of a coin flip, 60-40. Same thing for the H3, still a bit of a coin flip, 60-40. But as you get onto those higher H values, you can see we continue less and less often. For example, we only get an H4 28% of the time, and you can see from this H3 we reverse down, from this H3 we reverse down. So typically we don't get those H4 values. There can be outliers. Obviously, this isn't too low of a percent, about 1 in every 4 times we'll get an H4. But then you get to something like today. Today we had an H7. Yesterday we closed an H7. Today we would have been closing as an H8 if we made a new high. Now, you can see that we've only ever made an H9 one time over the last 200 days. So to pair with the 10% odds, which we talked about in the other video, there's a 10% chance or less of continuing higher because we're at the 10% odds. And then pairing with that, we're at an H7. The odds of today being an H8 are around 1 in 200, or 2%, because over the last 200 days, we've only gotten that H9 once. Now you can go even further, load up more days, so say the 2000. You're not going to be able to read much off of this chart here, but if you go back into Option Analyzer, you still have those same bar charts. So you can see that only 1, 3, 5, 7 times over the last 2,000 days have we continued past an H7. So 7 times in 2,000 days are we going to make an H8 or higher high today. And because of that, in the Discord today, we alerted puts pretty much right at open. There was some more reasoning behind it, which we can talk about in the trade recap, which I'll link down below. But we pretty much just rode them down all the way. Our main target was the IV wall, and at this point, contracts were around 500%. And then I was done for the day, and I sold out of my remaining contracts at 750%. But some people held, and I think they ran over like 1,500% on the day. So this tool is great for giving you a daily bias, and you can see how well it paired with this H7 here. The odds of making an H8 were extremely low. Never impossible. There can be outliers. If there was going to be an outlier today, could 100% been the day because we had CPI. But we followed the data. We went short side because the odds of continuing higher were very low. And you can see how this has played out previously about, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks ago. We had pretty much the same exact setup. We had an H6 right here. We were at the 10% odds where we've already reversed 1, 2, 3 times previously. This candle right here was the 7th candle. So if we were to make a higher high above this H6, it would be considered an H8. So you have the same exact percentages we had today, and you can see how well that paid that time. This was I believe like a 13-point move over 3 days. Today was a bit of an extreme. We had over 10 points just in the day. But you can see how well using this data works for finding possible reversals. And we'll look, before we end this video, we'll look at the downside for one more example. So we were showing the H6, H7 values. You don't continue past that very often. Now we'll look at the downside. You got the same thing. You can see right here, we were at the 10% odds where we had previously reversed 2 other times, and we were at an L5. So going into the day, we had never created an L6 over the last 200 days. So it's extremely, extremely rare that we're going to continue lower for a 6th time based on the last 200 days of data. And again, if you want, you can load up some more. 2,000 days, for example, and you can see that over 2,000 days, we had only created a lower low past that L5 3 times. So 3 in 2,000 times will we continue lower. This is how I like to use the option analyzer. Remember, there can always be outliers. Never go 100% of your port on something like this. While these are A+ setups, it's not going to work 100% of the time. This is just how I like to use it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I will see you all in the next video.